The Simone Feiler Podcast, giving authors a platform. Welcome to the podcast.
G'day there, I'm Simone Feiler. Welcome to the podcast. Have the great pleasure of chatting with Andy Robinson on my podcast today. We've just finished 6 hours or so of LeadersRus. Such a great way forward for leadership. I'm telling you, this is innovative and inclusive and something that the next generations are screaming out for.
Yeah.
And Andy, you're the man who's written the book about it and now here to chat on my podcast. Welcome.
Hey, I'm absolutely honoured to be here. Looking forward to this.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. Well, I was really looking forward to hearing your book, which I've now done, so I feel very enlightened.
Oh, cool.
So firstly, I like to ask my authors about how they liked the audiobook recording process.
I loved it. I love speaking, but being coached along the way by yourself, I think really drew the best out in the way I was presenting in the studio there. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Were you practicing? Because it certainly sounded like it.
It looked, so that was, I've never done that before. And so it was a real learning experience. But you made it easy, so that was cool.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. Well, you've got a beautiful voice. You can probably hear it in the audio, how good's Andy's voice. So firstly, you've been in leadership roles throughout your life in church and other organisations. How did you find it?
Yeah, look, I guess tall, noisy males back in the day were the ones thought of as the leaders.
Yeah.
And I was all of those things, so I, from a young age, got kind of pushed into leadership positions, whether I really deserved them or not. I ended up being there. And so that gave me a whole lifetime of leadership experiences in different areas, in very different situations. Mm. And look, initially sucked into a lot of the old ways of thinking about leadership, and then gradually starting to see some of this stuff just doesn't work anymore, and maybe hasn't for a while. And perhaps there are new ways of doing things, and practicing and experimenting and playing with some of those ideas in my life, and then watching how the consequences evolved out of that started me thinking there's probably better ways. Mm. That all combined with some of the observations of good and bad along the way, kind of started to form some ideas in my mind that after years and years ended up being that book.
Mm. So you got into leadership way back when you were very young in the church groups, and that's how you met your now wife, Kaz.
Yeah, so in youth groups, I guess, they were always looking for leaders and volunteers to help out.
Yeah. And
so that kind of automatically seemed to, my parents dragged me along to church.
Yeah.
And
didn't all of ours.
Yeah. And then
Thanks,
from
Mum.
there, and look, probably did me some good.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah. I think so.
But along the way then started to migrate towards leadership positions, and or whether there were no one else available or whether I was kind of pushing myself forward or a bit of both, ended up helping to run groups, running groups, starting groups and so on.
Yeah.
And then from there, you speak at something and people hear you and ask you to speak at something else, and the thing just grew.
Yeah. So the basic concept is that, you might have someone in charge, but in reality, everybody has leadership skills, even in your everyday life. Like we made a leadership sort of decision by deciding we're going to be doing this podcast now. So leadership, a lot of people say, some people say, not a lot of people say, a lot of leaders say, like, you're not cut out to be a leader, right? Or we're moving away from that.
I had it said about me.
Yeah. But, your concept is basically we all have the skills, and some of us have strengths in different ways to other people that we can, put our foot forward or our hand up and say, hey, I'd like to contribute. Elaborate a little bit more on this.
100%. So I start off one of the chapters by saying a few of the leadership quotes that we might have heard. She leads a very extravagant lifestyle. He leads a very quiet life. They moved up to the country to lead a more ecologically sustainable lifestyle and those sorts of things. And we talk about the people and what they're doing, but we often miss that leadership bit, that we're all leading a life in some way.
Yeah.
And have been all of our lives. We all lead our lives. We all make those decisions and then take the pathways that we've decided upon and lead our lives in a different direction. And that occurs to me then that A, we are all leaders, we're leading a life, and B, we've all got some experience in doing that. Years of leadership experience in leading our lives and making the decisions that we believe are best for us and the directions that we think we should go. So drawing back from that, the logic said to me then, we're already leaders. We already lead ourselves all the time. Maybe that could expand into other areas. One-to-one leadership with another person, group leadership opportunities, and then perhaps even on into corporate and organisational, if someone wanted to.
You talk about like leaning into people that have leadership as well and leading out of.
I actually really like that concept of leading into. So a lot of what I do isn't just speaking and writing, but coaching and mentoring as well. And one of the phrases we use there is leading into someone's life, speaking into someone's life and so on. But one of the concepts that you'll see in the book is that if we're going to earn the right to lead into someone's life, maybe we should lean in first, and maybe we should discover the real them before we start to try and lead in. And then secondarily to that, there's that concept that it's a bit of a dance. In this conversation, there'll be times when you lead and I'll follow with a response. Or I might lead with a thought and you acquiesce, and so on and so on. So there's that, I guess, in every one-to-one relationship, there's that sense of leadership as well. But it should never be one way. That should be that I lead, I follow. You lead, you follow. And that type of, which is why I liken it to a bit of a dance.
Yeah. Why do you think it's taken its course, that sort of, type of leadership, that the person in charge and they have the final say?
Yeah, so I guess the world's changed a lot, and that change seems to increase at an exponential rate. It was the same for many years, that it was the fittest, strongest, toughest male that ruled the roost and ran the tribe. And that probably worked back then when there was, woolly mammoths chasing the tribe around. Thousands of years later, thinking the biggest, strongest, toughest guy is still the person to run things is just incredibly outdated and misses the bulk of what people have to offer around. So a lot of those, that type of leadership, it grew into a lot of the governmental systems we see around the world and the way things are still run.
A lot of them?
A lot of them.
All of them?
Have a look at some of the big countries we know being run by those types of people.
Yeah.
And then that, of course, translated into the military and into running companies and so on.
Yeah.
Fine, it had its day. We don't get to go back and correct, but what we do now is, I think there's been a bit of a self-correction, a bit of an evolution of humankind, where we've now moved towards a feeling that it's not just them, it's not just the few at the top, that we all actually have experience, we all have a voice, and maybe we're better off hearing from all of us.
Do you think, you do mention it in your book, that you think COVID might have opened that way a little bit for us because we were all able to work from home? Who would have thought?
Absolutely. I think there's probably just a whole conglomeration of things that feed into it, but certainly social media and the rise of technology, the working from home, and COVID really fed into that. All of a sudden we found we could work from home, and that brings some sort of concept of self-management or self-leadership. I am a leader. I've got leadership skills. And so that really helped. A lot of these things give us a boost along the way. And so then I go, if you work from home and organize yourself there, you are a leader.
Yeah.
If you are on social media and you're an influencer, you are a leader. If you are a parent, you're a leader. And so on and so on. We run right through the list and start to go to people. I want to touch on something in people that hits a little button and pushes a wake-up thing that says, okay.
In one of the chapters that I really liked, that you really qualified that everyone has leadership, capabilities, is someone even making a decision like, I need to go to the shop to get the ingredients for dinner. That's making an educated leadership decision that I'm doing that.
And some people would argue, no, that's just everyday life. It's stuff people do all the time. And I would go, yeah, you're absolutely right. These are the leadership things we do all the time.
Yeah.
The everyday leadership examples that we all have to decide what's next, what's for dinner, what do I need to do now, and so on. We can demote those, I guess, and try and say, well, that's just your normal everyday stuff. Or we can start to look at them as, hang on a sec, so then I do make leadership decisions. Can I make quality leadership? Could I improve my leadership decisions? Can I grow to some level of expertise and mastery in those decisions? And so that, I think, respects that quality in everybody. And that's been, I guess, part of my learning journey along the way. And now something I'd really like to impart as well.
So what would you say are your strengths in leadership?
Oh, good for you. You never said this question would come up.
That's just my leadership quality.
very, very well done. Look, I would say, first of all, different to 20 years ago. I think I had really quite passionate about this. And so I start with a really strong belief. First of all, there is an acceptance of everyone and a respect for everyone. Beautiful. And the gifts that they have inside.
Love that.
When you start there, then you kind of have to go down the path of, if I respect that everyone's got some gifts, maybe I should make room for that in whatever I'm doing. And so just that decision and that belief has a lot of following on consequences.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
From it. So I guess that starting that strong belief spurs a lot of the rest. So when I speak to a group, I really want to wake inside of people that idea that I've got the goods. I have got leadership qualities inside of me. And then a bit of a challenge. So what do I do now? When I coach, I want to be able to draw that out of people, and so that they're going to leave every time feeling better off for having sat there with me.
Yeah. I think even just from reading your book or listening to the audiobook now, there's moments in there where I think, I've definitely been in that situation. You mentioned the boardroom. You're sitting in the boardroom and you're kind of like the nobody in the background that's not part of the management team, whether I don't know for what reason I've been in there, or I don't think that I'm qualified to give the answer to whatever the question is. But, you ask that question in your book saying, do you feel like you're in that situation where you think, I know the answer, but I'm just not game enough to say that?
And that's the thing. One of the concepts is, once we start to believe we've all got it, if you just lock the same old group in the same old meetings all the time, you'll probably get very similar decisions and same old outcomes. And just outside the door could be someone who has the answer, maybe has a solution for some of the problems you're facing, or what the next step could be. So as we start to democratize leadership, we can open up doors to hearing from everyone, hearing from lots of people, getting fresh inputs, and that's a sort of thing that can grow a company and increase creativity.
100%.
And I don't think anyone who's trying, there are a lot of companies now moving into that. style of leadership, but I don't think any of them regret it. I don't think any of them have moved into that and moved away.
No.
There are more and more heading that way.
Yeah, definitely. Well, more ideas. More brains, more ideas, And then also that gives them self-worth. If you think that people are actually listening to me and I'm contributing, it makes you feel good, and that would reflect on the culture and the morale of the team, really.
Absolutely. And when you build self-worth in someone, you're probably going to get the best out of them. Who wouldn't want a company where everyone wants to give their best because they're feeling so good about it? Yeah.
So when you started in youth groups and in your church groups and when you were younger and with Kaz, you mentioned in your book that there were people that sort of thought, or younger kids that thought, I'm not a leader, I'm not going to be doing anything or saying anything. And you guys, I'm not going to say coerce, but encourage them to maybe put their foot forward and show a few leadership qualities, and that they were unlikely candidates that ended up being some of the, strong leaders at the end of the thing.
Absolutely. Look, part of it was out of necessity. We ran youth groups in different states around Australia, and often with limited financial resources. Always, I think, with limited financial resources.
That's always the way, isn't it?
We had to run these things pretty much on our own. And often sort of underpaid, partly paid. We'll pay you part-time, but we expect full-time, and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that on your own if you had a group of 120 people. So we'd start to call them in, and then after a while, we'd see that there were some kind of fringe dwellers, the people on the outer.
Yep.
And part of our concern was we didn't want anyone left behind. We didn't want anyone feeling less than. And so we wanted to include everybody. And early on then, we'd start to form just 1 million different committees or little leadership teams. And right down to, if we had nothing else, you would be on the leadership team for welcoming people. And so your job was to, anyone new in the group, sit with them, befriend them, take them for supper, have a great time, show them that they're valued.
Yeah.
Right. If there was nothing else, you might not be on the planning committee or the finance committee, if we had one, and so on. But there was something for everybody to do.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that says, you've got a voice and we do value you. And what happened was we saw people really rose to that.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
The quiet ones,
Yep.
the younger ones, the ones people had said, you don't have the goods, you're not leadership material, and so on, all started to contribute. And even the ones perhaps that
naughty
we
ones.
disagreed with, some of the fun ones, some of the
Naughty ones.
rebel route, the naughty ones. Do you know, they gave great input sometimes.
Yeah. Well, they're creative, the naughty ones. I
The
know.
last few weeks have been boring. That's what I'm playing up for. So give us something exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you suggest? And that would really give you useful input from left field that if you take on board, you can build a better youth program and something that's more attractive for more people to come to and feel more included and able to network together and build relationships and grow together.
So how do you transfer that to an office situation? Just say, if there's a business, a manager or an owner of a business that has some staff in there and he's or she is running the company with a leader and would like to sort of open up to this idea, what's your recommendation to sort of start slowly stepping towards that?
Really well said about the start slowly bit. I think immersing yourself in it first. And starting to see leadership qualities in yourself and then saying, well, then if I can spot those skills in me, am I any good at spotting them in others? Because if we've been thinking I'm the leader, I'm the person at the top, we've created blind spots often where we don't see that in other people.
Good point.
Once we adopt the LeadersRus approach, we can go, okay, if it is in everyone, then what's in her or him or them? And we start to look for those things. Then we can call it out. And Simone, I've noticed you've got a really good speaking voice.
Thanks very much.
We've got a promotion coming up. Would you like to do the speaking part of that? Where you're saying to people, I recognise skills in you that we can use. Then from there it becomes a bit more overt, where you actually do need to start to address publicly, hey, as a company, we believe everybody here's got leadership skills.
Yeah.
This isn't new stuff, by the way.
No.
If you look at some of the quotes that I've referenced in the book, there's now years of people in some great companies around the world who have started this approach.
Yeah.
It might not be everyone yet.
No, but it's coming.
It's growing.
It's coming.
It really is. And that's when the type of announcements at some company function, hey, we're going to try things a bit differently now. You know that we see leadership in everyone. We're going to start to call on some of you to step up a bit and try doing this, or running a committee, or leading a team.
Do you think some people could think that that's taking advantage, that, people that are called upon for leadership roles, that they could think, well, how come I'm not getting paid for that leadership role?
Look, that's interesting. I think what we're doing at the time is we're really proactively embarking on like a leadership training journey. Often leadership training in companies has been just kept for the select few.
Yes.
And they go off to some leadership seminar that costs an absolute fortune, and the rest of us continue and
whining about it.
Once we start to do leadership training proper, or even just those types of small leadership experiments around the company, it gives a practical demonstration that we really believe this stuff. Now, not everyone wants group leadership. We can have leadership moments. And I think in a group situation, calling out the quieter ones and sometimes shushing up the noisy ones. Listen, we've heard from a lot of you already, but quiet little Tim in the corner there, what was your idea? And that's a skill, and also an out loud admission. We want to hear from everybody. So I think there's some subtle ways and some obvious ways that we can do this. And I think finding that blend for your company is the best way to go. Start small and then grow the thing and then make the announcement. This is where we're heading.
Well, that's a really good insight into group leadership and company leadership, but it all starts with yourself, right? And then one-on-one and in small groups with leadership. Yeah. So, for people that are listening that think I'm a bit of a leader, I'm a good leader, what would you say to them so that they could actually maybe even prove it to themselves?
Really good. Once again, when you adopt the idea that we're all leaders, it can be kind of humbling for some people, as well as kind of elevating for others. If you've thought, I'm a leader by comparison because I've got something others don't, then maybe it's time to think, hey, we've all got stuff. If you've thought, I'm not a leader, I haven't really got the goods, maybe it's time to go, you know what? You make leadership decisions in your life every day. And what happens then is we can start to say, let's recognise this stuff in all of us. But that means me as well. It starts with me, and I want to recognise that stuff in me. And I think there's a really good probe you can do, a skills check on yourself with some of the various profiling tools. I particularly love StrengthsFinder.
Yeah.
The minute I picked up the book,
you mentioned that in your book.
There's a line on the front page that says, we know there's a ton of profiling tools out there, and they kind of put you in a box and say you're a this or a that type of person. We wanted to start a conversation worldwide about what's right with people. And I just read that line and went, oh, I'm home. That's awesome. And so from there, looking at people's strengths and what you do have and what's right with you. And when you do that, you look at people and say, well, we've all got these strengths. It's not about what's missing, but what is there. And then from those strengths, what can they contribute?
So empowering.
Absolutely empowering.
Yeah.
And I define those strengths as leadership strengths. They're personal strengths. We all have them. But they're leadership strengths. So your skill with your voice can be used for yourself to do positive affirmations in the mirror in the morning.
Yeah.
It can be used with a friend to ask and answer. It could be used in a group to pitch in some ideas or to run a meeting. Or, if you wanted to, it could be used corporately.
Yeah. And everyone has something that...
Everyone has something.
Yeah. I think there's a trend, and has been for a while, that we're, you know, with the meditation and mindfulness, that we're all looking into ourselves and thinking more positively about ourselves. And, you know, for business leaders like yourself, putting that in the corporate world, that it starts with just basically being positive about yourself to be able to then lead is a really, you know, good thing.
It's absolutely a good thing. If you have a thriving bunch of people who believe that they have the goods, they believe in themselves, your mental health is better, your absentee days are down, your employee engagement is better, the creativity is up, so ideas are being fed in, the company benefits in every possible way, and there's no downside.
Yeah.
No downside to this at all.
How good's that?
Well, I say there's no downside. If you've got a couple of crusty old dudes in the top floor who are used to being the boss and suddenly they're feeling a bit threatened because now they're realising everyone's got skills, it might be a slight downside for them.
Yeah.
And some people could feel, if they're stuck in the past, they could feel a bit worried about some of these ways of thinking.
Yeah. And what would you say to those sort of leaders, those sort of bosses, those old schools? You know, if this thing comes in, how could you make them feel less threatened?
You know, probably the first thing I'd say is let's talk, let's have lunch. Somewhere nice, of course, because that's what they're used to.
With a bottle of wine?
Yes, a couple of bottles. But I think there'll be people who see that and embrace it.
Yeah.
And there'll be people who might be open to some ideas. And there'll still, in this day and age, there'll still be people who are fairly strongly against this way. They've been used to just doing what they do for so long.
Yeah.
They think the reason I'm where I am is because of the way I act, and that's me as the boss, and everyone else can just follow and obey. You can't change everybody.
No, very true. So did you draw on any of these leaders that you worked for or, you know, were influenced by to write this book, or did they help contribute to the idea coming up with it?
So we chatted privately about some of these, didn't we?
I told you we'll be doing a podcast after.
I have had the benefit of working with some awesome leaders and mentors and learning so much from them. People who saw stuff in me that I didn't, people who drew stuff out and gave me opportunities and challenges and stood by me. Incredible people. I've had the awesome privilege of working with some horrible bosses. and learned a lot there. And some of that is that idea of the reason this company's where it is today is because I act like this.
Yeah.
And that can actually concrete itself in some people's minds.
Yeah.
And they believe that their dominating, commanding style grew the thing to where it is, and that's what's going to keep it there. For some people, it's very hard to see how much better could things be if we did draw everybody in and hear from all. And like I say, they're probably not the people that would ask me to come and speak.
That's funny. So let's talk about your speaking then, and what you do outside of writing your book, LeadersRus.
Look, probably speaking's my thing. That's been my background. Speaking and training, and across not mainly leadership type of areas, but in goal setting, self-esteem, teamwork. Self-esteem has been a big one for years.
Yeah.
That was an area of study for me that I loved. And I guess seeing people grow and find that not only do I have some skills, but I have worth and value. That's the crossover, I guess, that not everyone wants to hear corporately. It sounds a bit fluffy to some people.
Yeah.
So we might do that outside of a lot of corporate situations.
Yeah.
When we're asked to speak at various retreats or something like that, where you can perhaps do a leadership weekend and get people together specifically for that.
Yeah.
In the area of personal leadership, can I just carry on from that for a sec?
Yeah, please.
I really believe that some of the big leadership questions are some of the personal leadership questions inside everyone. Who am I? Do I have value?
Yeah.
Am I worthy? Those types of things. Where am I going?
Yeah.
And a lot of those questions are answered with goal setting, the where am I going stuff, and self-esteem, the do I have worth. And I think in life, if we know where we're going and we feel good along the way, well, that's most of the battle.
Yeah, that's almost bringing me happiness thinking that could be me.
And if I can do that and bring happiness to people, teaching that and practicing that and getting people to find that within themselves, that makes my day. That lights my fire.
What's your hope for your book, LeadersRus? The long-term goal. You know, how would you like to see it all pan out in your perfect world?
In my perfect world,
where anything and everything can work out.
I want that book to be something that gels with people worldwide, to say, okay, some of these things I've been hearing, this is all coming together now. This is a style of thinking, it's a philosophy, it's an ideology that we should be embracing. I want that to crystallize for people, that it's not just some company over there or some person over there, but there is a groundswell of this type of thinking happening, and it's all moving towards something good. This is better for the world. This is better for every company, government, church, not-for-profit, everyone, everywhere.
It's really having a good look, you know, through everyone's eyes, isn't it?
Yes, and so I get to work with people, whether it's one-to-one or whether that's small or larger groups. I get to see how this stuff works, and I get to see the results as well.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That's the sort of drive home at the end of the day with a big smile on your face, and you catch sight of yourself in the rear view mirror and go, you did a good job, mate. Those people are really thriving now in a way they didn't know they were capable of before.
Oh, how good's that? That must be so, satisfying.
It's pretty satisfying. It's pretty special. I feel so blessed to be able to do some of those things and to have been able to do that for years now.
Yeah.
It's
obviously very good at that sort of thing. I mean, you've looking at self-esteem and bringing the best out of people, nurturing that thing that's within them to make them feel good about themselves. Is not everyone can do that.
You know that idea of calling, kind of this is what you're here for.
Yeah.
I often used to kind of big note myself and promote myself in perhaps some pretty awkward ways at times.
We've all been there.
We've probably all been there. Now it's more about this sense of, that weird thing when you're actually in a situation, it's almost like you can stand back and watch yourself in the situation.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. And I feel sometimes like I stand back and watch myself with a room full of people and go, this is what I'm meant to be. This is what I was born for. This is what I'm wired for. And when I do that, when I feel that, those kind of moments, it's just all totally worth it.
Do you think everything that you've done throughout your life has brought you to do this?
Yeah, even the kind of weird left turns and stuff-ups and trip-ups and mistakes.
It's funny that, isn't it? When you look back, you think, that's weird. Now I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and look, I think some of that's humbling.
For sure.
You go, wow, I didn't just climb here by myself.
No, it's not an overnight success.
No. I'm fortunate. I'm surrounded by awesome people. I've had great mentors, friends, and those who can lead into my life. And so that's been fantastic. And I've had opportunities too, which, sadly not everybody gets.
No, very true.
And one of the chapters in the book is, once we get to this point, how do I provide opportunities for others to grow into their leadership skills? That's kind of a cutting edge chapter.
It really was. It was one of my favourites.
Yeah, it gets a little bit in your face at that point, because it's now that you know this, what will you do?
That's what I found about the book, is that it builds up until eventually you're thinking, oh my God, I understand exactly what you're saying now. The fact that we're all leaders and everybody should have a say. And not necessarily like restructuring the business or the group or the one-on-one, but that everybody is heard.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
It is. It's, and I'm probably coming across a bit passionate. It's just probably the number one passion in my life. It really drives me.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where the book comes from. And the second part of your question on what's my wildest hope and so on for the book is not only the idea of that selling well and gaining acceptance worldwide, but also, look, every speaker wants speaking opportunities.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
And
well,
then
people, hopefully once they've heard our conversation and listened to your audiobook, will want you in their company, in their group, in their school, wherever it is, to nurture this thought.
Do you want to hear a funny story? I don't know if you'll include this, but my daughter bought a heap of those, and she gave one to a friend.
Oh.
And I got a phone call one day from a teacher in a high school on the Sunshine Coast somewhere who said, can you come and speak at our school?
Oh, how good's that?
On this topic. I went, who are you? How do you even know about me? And it was one of my daughter's friends who was a teacher there. I said, this is really written for adults. This is kind of, for those 18 plus who have got a mind developed enough. And she said, well, I think you should know I've been reading it to my class, and I'd like to actually get them to hear from you. And I went, okay.
Oh, how sensational.
And we had a ball.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. We put them into groups and had them drawing pictures of leadership and all sorts of fun stuff.
That's fantastic.
For a couple of hours.
That's where it's got to start, in school, when you're young and impressionable. That's where the inclusion's got to start.
Yes. So that was a lot of fun. From there, I guess, there's other books that follow.
Cool.
And other talks and other seminars.
After listening to LeadersRus, I've got no doubt that you're going to help people. No doubt. You have been.
Well, you've helped me a lot. The audiobook recording, the coaching from yourself was just fantastic. And I think that helped me to do a good job. And then this podcast as well. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. I like to, have my authors in for a chat so you can get your word out to the wider audience, not only in audiobook format, but people can come and have a watch, a listen of our podcast and find out a little bit more about what you mean from your book and a little bit more about you. So people can engage you to go and speak at their seminars or schools or wherever.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do they contact you? How do they find you?
So I've got leadersrus.com.au is my website. Welcome to contact me through there or directly through my email, leadersrus@outlook.com. I've spoken all around Australia and overseas a few times. Been very fortunate to be able to do that. I'm open to almost any group anywhere.
Excellent.
And then I have a range of seminars and I guess talks that might range from perhaps an hour to a 2-hour session to more of a keynote after dinner style of, 20, 30, 40 minute talk.
Awesome.
As well. So tailored for different occasions, taking just the highlights or running a group through some exercises as well.
Awesome. Well, all the best with it, and thank you so much for choosing to do your audiobook with me, Andy. I've Loved every minute. I love your inclusive, vision of having everybody being heard. I think it's really important moving forward in our planet the way we are today. And thank you so much for joining me on my podcast today.
Thanks for your time. I've loved every minute of it.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Please feel free to like the video, share the video, subscribe to my channel so that you can hear other authors that I chat with and help them promote their work, and share it with other people that you think need to hear their stories. In particular, Leaders Are Us by Andy Robinson. Share it with your boss. It might work.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining the Simone Feiler Podcast.
What's your story?
Contact Simone for a chat at brisbaneaudiobookproduction.com.